Hi guys, hello. It's been a while. It's been a very long while, so I'm gonna give it a couple of minutes, maybe just one or two, before I say welcome to Mentorship Moments, and we'll talk about that, right? So, moments over Mondays. But let me first say hello to a couple of people joining us right now, to Spume, to Cindy. Welcome. Sihle, hi, and Siamu. No Fanezile, I hope I'm saying that right. Sands, Joey M, welcome guys. Mrs. Ngwenya and Kwakanya. Hello to everybody. It's been a very long time since I've actually sat down and had a bit of a mentorship conversation. I think it's testament to how hectic things have been. And Bonita, you're absolutely right. It's been a minute. It's been a very, very long time. But I've got lots to say. So I'm really hoping that we can connect and have a conversation together. Please pop me through comments or questions in that question thingy at the bottom, and I'll definitely take up your questions. I'll definitely take in your comments. I want to have a conversation. I don't want to talk at you guys, because what I'm talking about right today is something that's been on my heart for a very, very long time. So here it is. Every month, for as long as I can remember in South Africa, in the month of August, we pause and we have the Women's Month celebration moment, opening up of conversational spaces, right? And typically what happens is that, and I feel bad, everybody's like, just nosy, acknowledge the fact that you're back on. Okay, so let me take a step back first. It's been hectic. The first thing is that you might have noticed that this says Mentorship Moments instead of Mentorship Mondays. So for those of you who are catching on, you'll notice that Mondays are hard to keep. And I know today is a Monday, but what we're trying to do as a team is to create more flexible, agile moments where we can just have mentorship conversations. And so we're not going to stick to a Monday. We're going to try and squeeze them in wherever we can. And that's of course because we've also launched another product, which is the masterclass series, which I really hope you guys are all watching on LinkedIn. Our next guest is somebody so amazing. I don't even want to mention it right now, but I will announce it at the end. So let's go back to the focus of our conversation today. So as I was saying and positioning this conversation is that every month we pause. The month of August in South Africa is dedicated to the month of women. And typically what it looks like is a lot of events, right? And in these events are a lot of panels, a lot of conversations, and one way or the other, you're either in the audience or you're on the panel or you're moderating the conversation. But this is a really intentional still moment as a country where we pause and we go, what are the conversations we still need to have as women for women? And part of the reason why we have Women's Month is we want to acknowledge that the lived experience of women has not been equitable, has not been comparable to men, and that in different facets of life, whether it's in economics, whether it's the social sphere, whether it's the political sphere, whether it's the business sphere, women have generally been confronted with structural challenges that have made their experiences less than. It's difficult to get funding is one of the conversations we keep having for women-owned businesses. The representation of women in certain industries that we still describe as male-dominated industries. We lament the poor representation of women in boards, in executive positions, in the C-suite more broadly. We talk about women in the arts. We talk about women in other industries, like women in health, women in academia. And the conversations have been ongoing for years now. Here's the question for me. Question for me is, so what? So what? That's what I want to talk about today. And that is to ask, are we doing a good job of tracking the impact and the evolution of these conversations? And what I mean by that is, are we sure that the conversation we're having a decade ago, which by the way is only 2014, the conversation we're having a decade ago, Bonita, on funding has changed? Are we having a different conversation on funding, or are we still lamenting the same challenges that women are facing when they're trying to access capital, as an example, right? Is it the same voices? Or are the voices of women changing on these panels? And what's the significance of that? What is the significance of having the same people as the face and the voice of women relative to different voices? Who's in the room? Is it the same? Is it the same people who are in the room, or have we been able to expand the space? Have we been able to invite other women in? Have we been able to invite younger women into the conversations? Have we been able to have the intergenerational conversations? And what about men? Have men remained outside of the door because this is a woman's thing? What has that exclusion really meant? And when men are in the room, how has it changed the conversation for the better or for the worse? What is it like to have men in women's conversations during the month? Is it something we should be doing more of, or is it something we should be doing less of? These are all the questions that I don't have answers to, but I certainly hope that we can have a conversation about it. And the reason I feel like we need to have a conversation about it is that if we don't, we run the risk of constantly, every August, just running around in circles, having the same conversations over and over and over again. And for me, they always say that you cannot change, manage, grow that which you don't measure. The question that people always bring to me is like, how do you measure your impact? This is one of the things, is to say we've got to be intentional and about how we measure the impact of the conversations that we've had and that we continue to have. So let's do some shout out first. I'm keen to hear for all of those who did attend Women's Day events and were part of panels or were an audience member or moderated conversations, which one was your favorite one? Which one was your favorite one and why? So put it up in the chat. Let's see what you guys come up with. I will talk about my favorite one towards the end because I did have a standout experience, very unexpected. And I'll tell you why it was a standout experience. But where I wanted to start off with is to say, one of the positive changes that I am seeing, I think we're starting to value conversation as a strategic tool that brings about change a little bit more. You guys will know I've always been talking about the fact that conversation is the birthplace of action, and that actually the biggest things in the world have come about because there are people who've decided, let me just pin that, Kopano. There are people who've decided that they are going to have a different conversation, that they're going to frame the issues differently, that they're going to bring different questions into the conversation. And so that's ignited different actions that have come out. I am, of course, as a conversation strategist, am absolutely pleased that this month I just couldn't say yes to everything. I just couldn't. There was too many conversations, too much happening, too many events. Some of them, if I had said yes to everything, I probably would have been to 2 or 3 conversations per day. And one might look at that and say, oh, it's just getting saturated. We're just fragmented and having conversations around each other. And I'm like, no, actually, it's a good thing that we are realizing that there is power in having a conversation in order to change the outcome of a certain experience that we don't like. And I'm also happy that we're not all coming to one national conversation and that we're having all these different conversations, because the lived experience of women is so multifaceted and so different that there's value in having the conversation about healthcare. There's value in having the conversation about finance. There's value in having the conversation about working moms and toxic workplaces. There's value in having the conversation about women in business. And Sihle, I love your comment where you're saying data-driven conversations. I'd love to hear from you. What would that look like? What would be the data that we're actually pulling, surfacing, and analyzing to help us make sense of how we measure our conversations. But Kopano, let me read your comment. Kopano says, I think this is where my frustration comes from. The conversation did not evolve. We need to move past the complaints towards the identification of the need for finance and start speaking about doing. Fantastic. I love that. I'm going to see if I can unpin that comment. Kopana, I think you make such a good point to say there are certain conversations that do feel like they have stood stock still, and we probably need to go back and engage. Why is the conversation not shifting, and how do we need to have the conversation differently to do that? But the other thing, Bonita says, I hate to be this guy, but I'm very skeptical about women empowerment events, because why am I paying that much for someone to tell me to believe in myself? Bonita, I'm just going to put your name down here so that I don't forget, because I want to come back to that, right? Because there has been a commercialization of Women's Day events, and that's fine if we are getting what we're paying for. Right? And kind of what I'm hearing you saying is there's a little bit of a disconnect between the ticket price and what you're actually getting out of the events. So we'll get to that. But one of the things that I want to raise, just to go back to Kopano's point about talking less about talking and actually talking about the doing and doing the doing. One of the things that I'm enjoying and that I am seeing is that in some conversations, there is a shift and a pressure that is being put on those who are sitting on the panels. People are like, don't come and motivate me. I don't want you to be telling me to be strong. So there's even a cancellation of certain language. People don't want to be called bogotos. People don't want to be, women don't necessarily want to be seen as strong. Women don't want to be described as resilient. Women are saying, show me the pathway. And this is what I'm hearing. Show me the pathway so I can knock on the door and apply for that opportunity. Tell me, give me the contact person, show me the direction. Who do I need to talk to? Where are they? Where's the information so that I can exercise my agency? And what I'm hearing is a shift away from just awareness of conversations and the awareness of, oh, there are funding opportunities. Oh, there's this that we can do for women in business. Women are like, no, we know that in general those things exist, but now we want more detailed, focused information. We want practical outcomes. And so there's a pressure for the practical. And I absolutely love that, because when we continue to talk in sort of high level theoretical terms, women are still saying, yeah, but what did I walk away with? And women are wanting the detail to be so granular, as in, what's the website? Who do I need to call? Who do I need to pick up which website? How do I immediately after this conversation exercise my agency and actually do something about that? And that for me is super, super encouraging. But there's also a dark side to that I am seeing from my perspective. And that is a culture of entitlement. And I know that I'm going to get in trouble now. People are going to start jumping off. Nobody wants to hear this side of the story. And that's absolutely fine. I was also in a number of conversations when the hand in the audience goes up and the question or the comment isn't about seeking information or pathways to exercise my agency or direction and guidance on what can I do, but a conversation and commentary around how do I get there yesterday? Why do I not have it? Why do you guys understand? And that for me is a little bit problematic because it stinks of entitlement. And I really hope that we are finding within ourselves the balance between putting pressure and demanding practical outcomes and demanding that we're tired of being motivated. We actually want real empowerment with information, with pathways to progress, versus the other side of the coin, if you can call it that, of entitlement and feeling like people owe us certain things. So there have been so many conversations where I've come out and people go, yeah, put me on the board. And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, but with what What do you have to offer? What is the unique experience that you're bringing into that board conversation? Or are you demanding to be put on the board because you're black and because you're a woman? And those two things are just not enough. And I mean, I could talk for another hour about this culture of entitlement. And so I'm saying, let's look out for those in the conversations. What are we really driving? Are we driving empowerment or are we driving entitlement? Because the two can be very close to each other. Then I wanted to talk about Bonita's point. Let me go to Bonita's point because Bonita's being spicy. So let's go. Bonita, you're not being demure about this question of yours. And this is the idea of the commercialization of women's events. So again, I don't see anything wrong with people seeing a commercial opportunity and are able to package and offer an experience that is worth paying a ticket for. But what I love about Bonita's question is that we are now also increasingly critically analyzing what am I just want to, oh gosh, guys, I don't know how to pin multiple comments. You'll have to bear with me. The pellet mom, I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to write it down. People are now critically analyzing the ticket price and the experience. And I think that's good because that means we're suddenly, as consumers of these products, because that's what women's events are essentially, as consumers of these products are saying, I want to see better value for my money. I'm not coming for vibes. I'm not coming for pictures. I'm not coming for a 360 camera. I actually want to walk away with a sense of really being empowered. And I think we need to do more of that, Bonita. We need to put the pressure on. When people come and say their ticket is whatever, 1,000, I don't even want to call out a number because now I'm going to come under fire, is to say, but what is the value that you're going to be delivered, and to hold people to that value. And I think that's how we actually innovate in that particular industry and actually get even better at connecting the conversation to an outcome, at ensuring that the experience is meaningful, that if you're going to take a full day out of work to go in and attend somebody's event during the day, that there is something you can point to and say, this is what I got. And I'm all for that. So I thought that was a very, very good comment that you're raising. And then the pallet mom says, slightly similar to Bonita, I don't have a problem with conversations being held. But since women empowerment events are largely commercialized, I do feel, though, at some point they can lose their focus. And I agree with you. If we were says tickets are 2 pom, guys, wait. I get it if let's see, Kamala Harris, or I don't know, when Beyonce comes, you guys pay a ticket for 2 pom. What's the difference? I mean, you're paying 2 pom if you were for other things. But I'm saying, guys, that when we put commercial pressure as consumers and to say, justify what am I getting for my price, we're actually helping the industry to develop and to grow, because you know what happens? There's going to be a separation between the ones who are being serious about really meeting what consumers want and those who are just doing it for vibes. And essentially, at the end of the day, people will stop buying. Nobody's going to buy a 2,000 Rand ticket for vibes. And so that's really, really good pressure that is coming through. And I absolutely love that. Joey, I want to read Joey's comments. Joey says, personally, I stopped attending August sessions because we just keep talking. While you might walk away motivated, there's no real plan in the how. Many times I've felt like I don't bring value. Yes. I think, Joey, you're really on the money on this one. But I do think that instead of walking away, we should actually be putting pressure and giving feedback. I always ask when I go to events to say, I don't see a survey. I don't see a feedback form. How do you guys know what you're going to improve next year? How are you guys? And so those are one of the things that I'm just like, I can't come and moderate an event and walk away. And it's been, firstly, it's makeup, it's an outfit, it's all sorts of things, plus the tickets, of course. And at the end of the day, you don't even have a feedback loop where you can go back and say, actually, what I would have wanted to hear more of is this and less of that. And so it's one of the things that I really hope that for those who are in this particular industry, that we are thinking about, how do we close the feedback loop? How do we know that we've had the conversation that women want to have? We've brought the right voices, we've raised the right questions, we've aligned it with the right moderator who's asked the most relevant questions, and if all you're happy to walk away with is a goodie bag, then that's it, maybe you're part of the problem. I know I'm not going to be popular for that one either. It can't be about the goodie bag. It has to be more than about the goodie bag. It's got to be about the feedback loop in addition to that. Kopana says there are those that we can trust to provide that value for that ticket. Definitely. I agree with you. And like I said, I usually go because I'm working, but every now and then I would attend an event because I really think that it's worth going. So the other thing that I want to talk about is, guys, please don't kill me. I'm sharing my heart. It's the first day in the week after Women's Month. I'm sharing my reflections. You don't have to agree with them, but I would love your engagement like we are doing right now. So here's the other unpopular thing. What I'm loving is that we are also increasingly moving away from the reference point of 56 as if it is the only point in history where women have stood up and made a mark. I love that. I think that is a sign of evolution. That is a sign of growth. Because if our reference point is only what happened then, are we saying that there has been no other contributions from women, no other big impactful moments from women, led by women, that we can reference when we're trying to think about how do we change a particular sector, a particular experience, a particular phenomena? And what I'm hearing less and less of is less and less of the reference to 56. And I think it's important that we never lose sight of that reference, because I think we can build on the spirit of 56. But when we were looking for tangible examples of what works now, what works in context today, when we're talking about changing cultures within organizations, I can't reference what happened in 56. I need a woman who is sitting within a corporate function right now, who's talking to me about the strategies that they're using to change the sense of belonging within the organizations, or what empowerment of women means within their organization, or giving definition to allyship and how they're supporting men to become allies within that organization. And I think that we need to be intentional about mining and looking for the stories of today, because therein lies the opportunity for us to cross-pollinate and share ideas and share inputs. So let me go back. Pellet Mom says, I love that too. That part is a win because we now see a narrative of different women achievements and contributions being recognized. Tumi, thank you. Tumi says she didn't know that this is the debrief she needed. I want to go to Masintlimo. I apologize if I've said your name incorrectly. And the comment is, I think in moving towards the how, event organizers can put together volunteer platforms to action these conversations. Then it goes beyond the panel discussions. I think that's also a really, really interesting, good idea. I'm not trying to be controversial, guys. I'm just trying to be honest. As we talk about this idea of building on the spirit of 56, but being intentional about mining the stories of women of today and what women are doing now, what strategies are working now, what's not working now, we also need to be careful that we are not rotating the same people across panels across the country. There are people who've become professional paneliers and professional panelists, if I can call it that. And it makes me think, well, that's how you actually build echo chambers. And so one of the things that I always do with my clients when I step into these spaces is to always say, I see this person because they're very popular. They're really good with sound bites. They always deliver the sound bites. They've got the social media following. I know why we're inviting them. But is this, in this particular context, the most relevant person with the most resonant lived experience that we can call on? And it's okay to mix and match panelists. Because remember, at the end of the day, people are putting up their hands and agreeing to be panelists. Yes, because they're doing good. But for a lot, it is about visibility. It is about personal branding. It is about thought leadership. So this is a platform that is reinforcing. So if you keep putting the same people on over and over and over again, all we're now being subjected to is that person's personal branding machine in full circulation. There is value in the unexpected voice. There is value in the unheard voice. There is value in the person who's outside of the spotlight, who's not panelariang, I'm making up words now, who's not a professional panelist. And what they can actually bring into the conversation. Some people's stories, we can sing them backwards now. Because we're constantly tapping into the same story over and over again, as if they're the only one with that lived experience. But the problem is us. And when I say us, I'm talking in particular about organizations who are the hosts of these conversations. Because we get lazy and we want to get the tried and tested voices that are going to deliver the sound bites, come with the face beat, come with the outfit, take the pictures, put on the reel, all of these things that we're looking for, instead of asking who's the best placed voice for this conversation. And that voice might not have a big social media following. That voice is probably not going to come with the camera person following them, taking reels, and then amplifying your brand on the back of that. But is this the most important voice in the conversation? That's the question. Okay, let me pause. I'm talking too much. There are some comments. Let's go back to the comments. All right, there is, okay, Kia says, definitely, because we are facing different challenges to those of the 56, though they laid a foundation and we have to build upon that with our own bricks. Kia, I love the idea of our own bricks, because our own bricks are our own experiences. And I couldn't agree with you even more. Iviwe says, everyone went with 1956 because it was easier to reference. It is as it was our shared national agenda. Now, kuningi, pay gap, mental health, work-life balance, and. And I think, Iviwe, you make such a good point, right? That there's a fragmentation of the enemy. And when I use the word enemy, hear me well. In 56, it was, as you said, there was a easily identifiable wall that needed to be broken and that needed to be brought down. Now, the experiences that women have are so multifaceted. And you're right, we have to fight the gender pay gap fight. We have to fight for mental health. We have to fight for cultural norms that keep us back within the context of our own families. We have to fight for funding. We have to fight for executive positions. We have to fight for board positions. We have to fight for representation. And so that leads to the fragmentation of those conversations. But we then have to do the work of going deep in those spaces and saying, which women have been doing this even before? And let's lift up their experiences, not in a glorifying, motivate me perspective, but walk me through the strategies of what's worked. Where have you failed? Why did you fail? Because sometimes we're so gung-ho on lifting the positive story that we miss the opportunity that in the failure story is where the greatest insights and growth for everybody else sits. But it takes courage. Also the courage in the moderators to be able to go there. Dumi says, you're highlighting the value in the unexpected voice, but we're also asking the same questions to the same people. Oh, Dumi is coming for me now. And you're right. Lazy questions, lazy moderating. But part of the reason why that's happening And I'm going to say this because I really mean it. Because we want to get moderators that are not moderators, but because they are popular and famous, or they're celebrities, and they're going to bring visibility. And so, the only question you are going to get in that context is, tell me your story. In fact, when I was growing up, we used to write that essay in primary school called Myself. Namin Katelo, myself. Right? Where we're asking the same question. Tell us your journey. What led to your successes? It is because we're not doing the work of conversation strategy. We're not linking the conversation with the opportunity for strategic breakthrough. That's what we should be doing in these conversations. Not having feel-good, conversations. I mean, for crying out loud, if I hear one more time someone ask me, how do you cope with imposter syndrome? I think I'm going to lose my mind. We've evolved past that conversation. But it's the one question over and over and over and over again. So all I'm saying is, do me your right. And we need to do better. Spume says, I hope that this is not one of those times where something that has been popularized because of its importance is suddenly becoming downplayed because it's getting stale, because it's overly done. So Spume, what do you mean? Maybe just unpack for us a little bit. I'm keen to hear what you mean by that. I'm not sure that I've understood it completely. Zaza is saying, feedback, that is so critical, but would they know the need and demands of their consumers without feedback? That's why it ends up being vibes. But guys, we as the audience give the organizers the perspective or the perception that all we want to come for is vibes. What we do there is we're taking pictures, we are on the 360 cam. When it comes to asking questions, it's a few people who are asking questions, but for the most part, people are happy to have a face beaten and outfit. And so I think, Zaza, that part of first of all, when you go to these events and a panel is speaking at you for an entire hour and not speaking with you, that's the first sign that there's a problem. What I mean by that is panels where there's no time for audience engagement. There has to be time for audience engagement to actually have a real conversation. Otherwise, we could just be watching it on YouTube or watching it from home. So the first pressure point we need to put in is to say, hi, sorry guys, is there going to be an opportunity to ask questions? Right? And if there's no, and also when that opportunity is opened up, to also take the liberty of giving feedback in the flow. I've seen this so many times where it works and works well to say, guys, I have a question, but before my question, I do just want to raise a particular thing and raise it. Because that's what courageous conversations are all about. If we then go and raise it on X or on social media, we're like, the event was this, was that, wasn't nice. But in the moment, we didn't raise our hand and actually say, guys, we're missing the point here. In fact, maybe I think we're asking the wrong questions. I'll give you an example. I just don't want to call out people and organizations, but there was an event that I was moderating at. I was doing one panel, so I wasn't doing the whole event. I was doing one panel last week, and everybody and all the panelists were being super polite and feeling like they just needed to say the proper thing. And this one particular lady that I have absolute and utter admiration for put up her hand to ask a question. I gave her the microphone, and she said, "Stop the bus. Stop the bus. Why are we not talking about this, and that?" That's our responsibility as the audience, even as a fellow panelist, is to hold the conversation to its authenticity by being the one to be courageous enough to raise their hand and say, "Stop the bus." And I have found that those have been the best conversations that I've been a part of. Sense, absolutely, there's value in the unpopular and the unheard voice. Joey says, I'm yet to attend a session where a person talks about how they took the tools they learned 2 or 3 years back from the same event and was able to win personal struggles. That's tough, because what I'm hearing you say, Joey, is that even the practical advice that is being shared in these spaces is not relevant. And that's something I'm going to put back to you as a question to say, help me understand, are we saying that? I have a little bit of difficulty buying completely into that. Because I've heard some interesting things in panels, and I've tried some of those things. I probably haven't had the opportunity to go onto a platform and to go speak about them. But I think it's a great question, especially when you are on a repeat stage now for the moderators, to say, you were on this, firstly to study the evolution of that conversation. So if you've been following a particular woman's conversation for some time, and you're now moderating, and this person's back on stage, and they were on stage or part of the audience or whatever it is 3-4 years ago. So ask the question, what's different between the you now and the you then? And I think that's a really clever way, Joey, that you are inviting us to think about it. Palette Mama says, I'm for feedback. Maybe it will push the event organizers to source new, or rather new pioneers who got motivated from attending the previous event, and will help them to see if the events are impactful, I imagine. So I like that idea. And Tlate is affirming that, to say there's definitely a gap around measurable results. So when we re-invite people into the conversations, are we stress testing what's different between then and now? Okay. Day says, it is important to empower the attendees with practical tools on various topics discussed. Also, that the conversations don't become academic and theoretical, but deliver meaningful change. Yes and no. And I'll tell you why. Definitely, mostly yes, I agree with you. And where I've seen this work very well, I remember a couple of years ago, I think it was Dr. Precious Motsepe actually published something she called the Little Black Book. And I think I might have a copy somewhere here in the library. In the little black book was actually a list of contacts of funders, investors for women in business, GBV, contact details for women who are in that situation, health and wellness context. So it was literally a physical, tangible thing that you can walk away with. So I agree with you in that regard. Where I don't agree is on the academic and theoretical part. I'll tell you why. There's a space for academic rigor in these conversations. Sometimes I tend to find that we're just dropping lines because this is what everybody is saying, but we don't understand the source and the significance of those things because there's nobody who's challenging it from an academic perspective. And about a month ago now, I was moderating something in Zimbabwe, and it was half academic, half practical. In fact, the way they organized it is that half the people who were invited were actual academics, people who'd written papers, and this was about philanthropy in Africa. People who'd written papers about the evolution of philanthropy on the continent, people who were doing PhDs, who had attained PhDs, who were studying actively what are the variables that are shaping philanthropy on the continent. And then on the other hand, they also had practitioners, people who are running philanthropic organizations, people who are making decisions around disbursement. And what I found was beautiful about the convergence of the practical and the academic is that the academic was almost like a challenge to the practical to say, but do you understand the bigger picture of what you're doing when you make investment decisions like this? Do you understand the structural impact that's having? And I thought that was really, really interesting. I hadn't seen that format in a long time, but I thought it was a really, really interesting format. And the only reason I'm raising it is that I'm not saying that we need to throw out all things academic with the bathwater. But what I'm saying is that there needs to be a good balance between the practical and the academic, because sometimes we need to understand the epistemological roots of the thing that we're advocating for. And that's just the nerd in me. But I think that it is super important to have an appreciation of both. And also to not over-theorize and over-academatize. I mean, that's obviously not going to work. But I think there's a place and a time when we can have both. Hey, Lady B, Wang Caesar, yes. Lady B says, thank you for these conversations. I've known you through these events, and you have made an impact and transformation to me. And she gives the example of a talk that I gave about value over volume. Hey, Lady B, you've saved us moderators with your comment, but thank you very much. That's very generous of you. But I think it's important that to get that feedback loop, that the things that we do talk about are having an impact, and sometimes they don't, and we need that feedback loop as well. Tlate says, here's an uncommon truth. Not all moderators are substantive subject matter experts. Yes, Tlate is going to difficult places. I don't want to get into trouble. But Tlate, you couldn't be more honest, right? And more on the mark in this. And here's the problem. First and foremost, not all organizations appreciate the value of a real moderator. And yet here we've got Mike from finance, and Mike is a good speaker, so Mike can moderate. That's the attitude, unfortunately. And that's a lot of organizations defer just to use the most well-spoken person within their organization and just assume that being a moderator is about a good construct of words, which it's not. The second mistake we make is to confuse the moderator with a crowd puller / celebrity influencer person. And so what some corporates do is they try and get the most well-known, big face, big, whatever the case is, without really thinking about whether that person has the substantive knowledge in that subject area, right? And so I'm always in awe of a client who will ask me and say, Nozi, not to be rude, but do you know anything about this, right? And it happens. It happens. But it just doesn't happen often enough. Most of the time, there's just this... yeah, of course. I mean, she speaks well, so she can speak about everything. It's not true. And the audience can feel when you don't know what you're talking about. And it's a really unfortunate thing that happens not only during Women's Month, but I think just happens more broadly. I've spoken ad nauseum about the importance of having a subject matter expertise in the areas in which you're moderating. And if it's not your subject matter, then leave it alone. Guys, it's not me, ne? It's Tlate. I just came to be the messenger on that. Tlate is also saying it's high time we seek technical gender experts. Yeah. And this is why the importance of having the academic voice is so significant sometimes. That we can't just have the people who are activists because, like they did a tweet here and there about a particular situation. And that you actually have people who study gender constructs, who study in like structural imbalances that women are confronted with, who have a historical lens as to where these things come from and how do we break them going forward. People who've dedicated years of understanding that to that level of granularity. It can't be that the expert is the person who's just going to come and talk about imposter syndrome during the month. Is a lot. Okay. Lady Atlee says, personally, I also love it when they open up the conversation to the audience. I mean, getting the perspective of attendees on an issue is so dynamic and showcases the unexpected voice. For me, it's just one of those non-negotiables, Atlee, because I just feel like you're missing a whole opportunity to infuse a different perspective that the moderator and the panelists and everybody else who's there has missed by not opening up the conversation to the audience. Zaza says, maybe it's time to get rid of the name events. Once off hype, the events, because of once off hype, rather we should call them a program, like properly structured, packaged offering that can be monitored. I think you have a good point, Zaza, because I think If you follow the money, the people who are making money during Women's Month are the eventing companies, are the decor companies, and I would bet my last 50 cents that when in the process of organizing an event, very few people are talking about, let's bring in somebody to help us build the program so that we can align the objectives of why we're doing this to the outcomes that we're going to track afterwards. We are sourcing for the wrong thing. We are doing events. In fact, okay, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but just bear with me. I think in the ones that I've seen where I've really left underwhelmed, it's because the blueprint was just like, put together a wedding. Just put together a wedding, and then we're just going to get a couple of speakers and a moderator or MC to do that. But essentially the brief is the same. As somebody who, I still say recently married. I know it's not that recent, it's been about 4 years now, but as a person who still has a freshness of planning a wedding in their mind, it's the same thing. And so for those organizations that will do and will prioritize venue, decor, flowers, drinks, goodie bags, what else? What else do we do at weddings? MC, program, and then the last thing is the content. It's the same thing. Because when you're getting married, you're hoping for the best, that whoever comes and speaks on the program is not going to embarrass you and is going to say something good, but you're not actually controlling for that. So we are probably caught in a vortex of curating experiences through events instead of curating conversations through programs. But you guys said it wasn't me. Love that. Spume says, there seems to be a trend lately of downplaying or ridiculing things once we become too used to them. I'm also guilty of that sometimes. Oh, does that mean you're saying that are we attacking women's events because we're now used to them? Certainly this is not a conversation about attacking women's events, because I'm part of that. I'm always there. I make a crap load of money in August. But it is about how do we hold ourselves to a higher standard and just not getting complacent and not allowing ourselves to get comfortable with just pulling off events. If we are saying that conversation is the birthplace of action, then what we are in the business of is creating conversational spaces so that we can birth action, not to have an event where we just have a nice, good time. And also, if that's what the intention is, that's also fine. I've had clients come to me saying, so we just want you to help us with identifying people to attend. We don't want a conversation. We don't want a moderation. We just want to have a good time. Then if that's what we're doing, then we must also say that the intention of this is vibes, good time, good pictures, and so on. But we're not trying to shift anything. And trust me, there are plenty of those where people will do a panel discussion for 20 minutes. What can you discuss in 20 minutes? Anyway, I'm getting personal. Anyway, Uma Makwela Omuhle says, I'm certainly raising this point next time I'm at an event, and I don't mind missing out on an invitation the next time. And you know what, Makwela, you're not going to miss out on an invitation the next time, because the commercialization of it will mean you will get your invitation. So all is well. Bonita says that's what that 1,500 must be about. I'm sure we're back to the commercialization. Okay, guys, I want to pick up. Z is also saying, guys, I didn't think I was opening up a complaining session. After the whole month, got all dressed up. Now you're here on my mentorship moments, just throwing complaints. You guys. I can't believe this. Even Ulento, Makelo says, I'm yet to meet a person who's benefited from these events, but you guys keep buying the tickets. There's 5 poms sometimes even. Aye. Makwela, how many events did you go to? Let's have this conversation as well. Okay, to me, great question. And Tabi saying as well, I want to raise the, oh gosh, guys, we've got 9 minutes. I don't know how we're going to get through this. Tumi says, this thing of assuming that audience members are students and panelists are experts is so problematic. To me, you're on it. So one of the things that I've been really pushing for is this idea of destaging the conversation. What I mean by that, you know, the stage is very symbolic. There's a reason why a stage is higher than the audience. There's a reason why the audience is physically lower looking up at somebody who's on the stage. It is one of the many ways in which we root the power imbalance between those that are on the stage and those that are in the audience. And I think that one of the most courageous things we can do right now is to destage the conversation, to democratize conversations, to open them up, and to lose this mindset that people who are not on the panel don't know what they have nothing to offer. It couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, already from a moderating perspective, I'm always reminding moderators, especially the ones that are trained by me, to say, people didn't come here to see you or to listen to you. So as a moderator, your voice must be minimal. You need to be asking questions in 10 words or less, because this is not about you. And so some moderators get very confused about this student-teacher dynamic, parent-child dynamic that actually shouldn't exist. And I think the fact that you're calling that out is brilliant. And it's something that I'm so passionate about and constantly wanting to talk about over and over again. Ntabi Singh says, ambiguity in answers. People speak big English and then lose their audience. But I blame the moderator in that instance, Ntabi Singh. When people start using big English and lose their audience, as the moderator, you have the ability to paraphrase, to simplify, or to ask a follow-up question to say, what do you mean by that? That is our job, to be the conduit between the panelists and the audience. And when you have a bad moderator, that moment is going to be a moment that's lost in translation. It shouldn't be like that. And so we shouldn't be, as moderators, excited by hearing big English. Hey boo. When we hear big English, in fact, that's when we're supposed to do the job of deconstructing and simplifying and stepping into the posture of being a conduit. You're going to make me preach when Ntabi saying as in. Joey, guys, 7 minutes. Okay, Joey is saying, another question we should be asking is that, why are we the only ones attending these events? We are solving for issues of diverse environments, yet we are sitting alone. Right. Yeah. So about, I think it's 3 weeks, 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks ago, I was moderating a conversation for another client. Again, I don't want to mention the sector because you just need to then just go to my Instagram and you'll know who I'm talking about. And it was an intimate whatever. And I just said, guys, for every woman who's walking in here with an intimate invitation, they must bring another woman who's not at their level, but a woman in the pipeline who could potentially be a woman who replaces them in the future. And that's how we ensure that we're expanding space. We can't talk about opening doors for each other, throwing down the ladder, throwing down the elevator. But practically speaking, when you have the opportunity to step into the room and bring someone with you, we're not doing it because we're content to be amongst the in crowd taking pictures alone. So Joey, I think that's a good point. I went to an event that wasn't in August, thankfully. But I just, you walk into a space and you know everybody in the room because there's just like, this is just about rotating certain groups of people, and I speak as an insider. I'm not speaking as an outsider trying to get in. I'm speaking as an insider. I'm saying, guys, it's not good for what we're trying to do, which is to change the lived experiences of women. Okay. Yeah, Z says, as attendees, we also need to research the speakers and panelists and come ready to engage. Exactly. And Z, and be the one who raises the question to say, I hear this glowing, sparkling story that we are talking about, or we've just heard from stage. I'm interested in 1997, when you were starting with one product as part of your service offering, how did you negotiate with retailers, as an example, to build off that to get to the 50 products that you have on stage today? Because that person, a lot of people don't always appreciate the value in the struggle story. We're only wanting to showcase the success story on the panels. And it's our job to go back and show through the questions that we ask that there is value even in that moment when you thought you were standing stock still. And that's actually where we want to learn from. Sihle says, hey, stop inviting people based on their titles. And I'd add to that, Sihle, and I'd say based on their Instagram followers, ex-followers, or whatever the case may be. Selemaju, I hope I'm saying it correctly, says maybe we are also not prepared for action when attending these events. We might be looking for motivation and vibes, Instagrammable moments. How prepared are we going into these events? I love that reflective question that you're throwing back at all of us as well, because yeah, you took a lot of time to curate your outfits. You took a lot of time of finding your MUA to do your face and be good and whatever. How much time did you actually take in researching the speakers, coming in with a view and a voice, and making sure that you're agitating? I always say that at the beginning of every conversation that I moderate to the audience, claim your share of voice. And you'll have one or two people, but for the most part, people are just happy to get pictures with the panelists and the deco. And then we end up not even having a proper conversation. Guys, I promise I didn't mean to open this can of worms. I really just... Oh, and Tabi Singh says, we didn't know there was such a book. It's called The Little Black Book in Tabi Singh. I'm sure you'll be able to find it. Okay. All right, guys. I think we are done. I wanted to tell you about that one event that I just thought was absolutely amazing, and all for the wrong reasons, but hear me out in the last 2 minutes. So I got invited to come and moderate a conversation. Again, I won't mention client, about a sector, in a sector that is still considered male dominated even today. But the beautiful thing was, all the panelists were actually women who had been a part of this sector for the last 20, 25 years. They all had a long track record and a long history of being in the sector. And it was such a real conversation in the sense that firstly, it was truly intergenerational. So the ladies on the stage had earned their stripes. They'd earned their space in the industry, and they were known, right, for impact and for having changed cultures, changed organizations. But the ladies in the audience, for the most part, were people who were trying to still get into the sector, who were lamenting the challenges. And there were real and honest conversations, even to the extent where somebody in the audience put up their hand and said, but guys, all of you sitting over there are the gatekeepers. If you had done your job, there would be no need for this conversation. So tick on authenticity, tick on courage. But in addition to that, the ladies on stage were also very courageous in their responses. And one of those was, let's talk about your culture of entitlement and why you think you deserve to be, to have anything without putting in the requisite effort and the work. So it was a 1 hour, 15 minutes. That's all I needed. Life-changing for me, reaffirmed my belief that conversations are important, reaffirmed my conviction that there is action that comes from this. And what came from that was a decision, by the way, that this group of women who were on stage, because they've got the the organizing power and the coordinating power were now translating these conversations into monthly online sessions, and all the women in the audience needed to do was to sign up to be a part of that ongoing conversation. And the purpose of those conversations is to go into some of the practical strategies of how to make it in the sector, how to stay in the sector, how to practically open the door for other people, and so on and so forth. Now, if there's anything that I could have been a part of this month, I am so grateful that I was a part of that. So, in closing, all I've got to say is I remain convicted that conversation is the birthplace of action. I remain convinced that we have to create conversational spaces and be intentional about them. But I'm also being honest about the fact that we need to be careful about not allowing the commercialization of these spaces to make us lose focus. We are here to change the lived experiences of women, to shine a spotlight on the stubborn challenges that are not moving. So the conversation has to change as the situation changes. And if the conversation is not changing, it probably means that the situation is not changing either. So are we framing the questions incorrectly? Do we have the right people in the spaces? How do we destage the conversation? And how do we do a whole lot more? With that, I'm going to go to my family and go have dinner. For those who are going to DM me afterwards, peace and love only. I love you guys. Don't fight with me. I just come here for peace. I just come here to reflect on what I've done. I'm exhausted from Women's Month, to be quite honest, but I really felt that this was important for us to have this conversation. And so with that, there's so many comments. I will look up of them. Remember, we're going to put this on YouTube so you can go back and watch it, and all the comments will be there. Good night. See you on Mentorship Moments, the next one. But please look out, 12th of September, we're having a masterclass series with Dr. Lulu Kwakwa. You do not want to miss that conversation. And that happens on LinkedIn. All you need to do is follow me on LinkedIn, and I'll see you there. Bye-bye, guys. Ciao, ciao.